Want to know how to make $10,000 of passive income with Kindle publishing on Amazon? Well, it really breaks down to one major aspect: scalability. I'm going to share my strategy of outsource, scale, profit, and reinvest in the video coming up. What's going on, YouTube? Welcome to The Creative Grind, and today we're talking about how to make $10,000 a month of passive income with your Kindle Direct publishing business. I was able to achieve over $10,000 a month with my publishing business on Amazon, and I want to give you a little bit of insight of what it truly takes to get there. And the word passive income does get thrown a lot around, and I do want to make the distinction that publishing books on Kindle, it is hard work. So, this is not a fly-by-night, get-rich-quick scheme, and I will always say that anytime that I mention passive income, because I think people need to hear it. Don't be fooled by people saying that you could start making passive income right away. This is after months or even a year of publishing books, and this is going to lead me to my next point. Passive income, when I think of passive income, I really think about two pillars or two key factors here. One is scalability, and the second is your actual workload. When it comes to publishing ebooks, the scalability is actually your backlist, right? So how many books you have out there in the market. And each book that you have out there is a new opportunity for new readers to find you, and also to collect royalties over time, right? So the more books you have over there, the more royalties you'll eventually collect. The beauty about having a large backlist is when you combine that with a email list, and you should be building an email list as an author or a publisher, and I do have more information on that in my marketing video for Kindle publishing. When you combine a large backlist with a good email or marketing strategy, that's where things get interesting, because you really ultimately get the best of both worlds. You get the discoverability and just those royalties coming in from people just organically finding you on Amazon, but you also can blast out you every couple of days. When you grow an email list, now you have subscribers or readers that are into your content, and you could actually send them links to your backlist, and that way your backlist can generate you money via your email campaign. The second factor is workload, right? And less of a workload. So I made the mistake when I first started publishing, is that I started making money and I brought more authors in. So as those authors kind of grew, so did my output, so did my backlist. But that meant that I was publishing books 2, 3, 4, 5 times a month. So what that ultimately meant is that my workload 4, 5, or 6x for that month. So not only was I doing the formatting, but I was also doing the book covers. I was also doing all the promotions, all the marketing. So I was spending a lot of time, over 40 hours a week, on my publishing business. And the more books that came out, the more work that I had to put out. So it really became a lot of work for me. Eventually I had to stop and just overall rethink my whole publishing business. And I really didn't want to work that much. I wanted to do other business ventures, other projects, and this publishing business started to become my life. And that's not ultimately the whole point of creating an online business was for me. So I started to outsource all of my content creation, and I outsourced my writing, I outsourced my editing, I outsourced my formatting, and I also outsourced my cover designs. And my cover designs were my babies, because I have a background as an artist, as a graphic designer, and that was definitely a plus when I first started out because I didn't have to basically hire a cover artist, but it got to a point where my income grew so much that I was actually losing money by not hiring. That took time away from me being able to market, being able to see the trends in the publishing world, and really just running the business instead of having to worry about another thing. So eventually I let go of all those things and I was able to grow a lot quicker and actually spend less time on my publishing business. So all these points that I made really revolve around one key factor: outsourcing. So I'll grab my laptop to my right and I'll begin breaking down my process. So let's go ahead and look at book creation. I split this up into 4 pillars, which is your writing, your editing, then you have your cover art, and then you have your book formatting. So let's go ahead and begin with the writing, which is going to be the most time-consuming part of the pipeline. And you obviously have 2 options. So if you are a writer yourself, you will be writing the content. And if you decide to become more of a publisher, you will be outsourcing this to other writers. So let's go ahead and look at the do-it-yourself method first. And there are a variety of pros and cons to this approach. The first pro is that you'll have less overhead. You're paying somebody else to write the content for you, therefore you don't have to pay them. Also, if you've been writing for a while and you are skilled at your craft, you know that you're pumping out quality content. So you're not going to be spending a lot of time going back and forth, and at the end of 1, 2, or 3 months, you get a piece of content that's not ideal for publishing. The last pro to this is solid deadlines, because you're the one that's writing the content, so you'll have a clear understanding of when you'll actually finish your work. And this really becomes valuable when you start doing pre-orders, right? And pre-orders are a killer way of actually getting sales before your books actually hit the shelf. You doing the work, you're pretty much guaranteed that you'll have a good idea of when the book's going to be done and then when the book is going to be published. So let's look at the cons of you creating your own books. Well, the first con is that it's not scalable, right? You can't duplicate yourself and actually produce books. It'd be nice if you could, but right now, as technology stands, you can't. So what does that mean? Well, that means that your output of books and therefore income is actually capped at the speed in which you can produce. The second part to this is that it could be downright overwhelming if you are producing your content and marketing it as well, right? So if you've never dealt with digital content, the marketing side of things, it's going to take you some time to actually pick up these skills and pretty much build your own brand as an author and a publishing company. So let's go ahead and look at the outsource side of things, and we're going to go ahead and look at the pros and cons as well. So the pros here and the cons, well, let's start with the pros. So it's definitely scalable, pretty easy to understand. If you are paying people, you could exponentially hire more people, and those authors will go ahead and exponentially create more work for you. Therefore, you will have eventually a larger backlist, and you can grow as a publishing company a lot quicker. The second part to this is that you could just get the book from the author, prepare it for distribution, and then take care of the marketing. So your focus is actually split into a lot less departments. Therefore, you could be more efficient in those. So let's look at the cons of outsourcing your work. Well, there's definitely more overhead. You have to pay writers, and now under this new KDP Select, seeing that it prefers longer content, you're going to be paying more for longer titles than you would a couple of years ago, right? So the second con to this is missing deadlines, right? So as you grow and you have more followers, more readers, and you kind of pretty much increase your reach, fans are going to expect things from you, right? More titles, especially if you start creating series. If you are outsourcing this work, it's going to be a little bit out of your destiny. And obviously you can set deadlines for authors, and most of them will try to keep them, but sometimes you deal with authors that A, go missing on you, B, things happen to them and these deadlines have to be pushed, And see, yes, you do have those writers that are stable and pretty much keep close to those deadlines. But in my opinion, most of my deadlines always had to be pushed. Now, how I was able to overcome that is that I would have multiple ghostwriters working on some projects, so I would be pretty much able to fill the gaps as needed. And then the last part of the con here is that the quality of the content. So when you're starting out, yes, you can have a author submit pretty much a sample, you'll review it, and then you and your team decide to go forward. That content that they gave you as a sample should match the rest. But sometimes things don't pan out like that. Sometimes writers have off titles. They're going through things in their life. This happened to me once on Guru, where I hired a writer and they actually were flipping the work. So basically what they were doing is they were acting as the middleman, and each time I would hire that person, they would actually be pulling from other writers. So they were a middleman, but what happened was when I was contracting him, he would get a good writer for the first batch and then a mediocre to poor writer. So the quality of the written content actually suffered. And it actually took a couple titles for me to catch on. Personally, I came in with a publisher's mindset, so I outsourced my first title. I am not an author, and basically I had good success that route. If you are a writer and that is your passion, or maybe you are an artist and you want to go ahead and create graphic novels, that's definitely a way to go. But even if you start as creating your own works, then I would definitely have you think about expanding at some point. So a lot of, especially in fiction, a lot of fiction writers, once they build up their name or their reputation, they'll eventually have authors under them, and they'll use their name under as a presents line, and they'll introduce new authors. So they're actually kind of the author / publisher, and in essence, those authors under them, as the books are being marketed, actually help promote the big author or the main author. So where are you going to find these writers? Well, I've used Upwork extensively. I've also used Guru and People Per Hour, which is a UK-based freelance website. So let's go ahead and move on to editing. And with editing, even if you're the author yourself, I still recommend that you basically outsource this. You can get an editor, a quality editor, in one of these platforms that I named for a good price. And also, it makes sure that you have a quality product. As an author, you might be tied emotionally to your work, but it's just finding that right editor that's not going to butcher your work or kill the essence of what you're saying, but also going to clean it up and make sense of those little things that sometimes get muddled, or only you as an author are interpreting one way, but the reader might interpret the other way. So I see the editor as a good mediator between the author and the readers themselves, and I strongly recommend this. So let's go ahead and look at the cover art, right? And you definitely want to outsource this unless you're a trained graphic designer or cover artist. And unfortunately, people do judge a book by the cover. This is the first thing that they see when they hit the Amazon Marketplace. So you want to make sure this is presentable, and you definitely want to have a cover that's in line with what you have in the marketplace or categories that you're competing in. Go ahead and go to Kindle eBooks. And here on the breakdown by categories, let's go to business and money. Right? So maybe if you are publishing a book about, business and money, you want to stick to pretty much what you see here, right? You don't want to go too far outside of the norm. And this is important when you're actually looking to hire a designer, right? So if the examples that a book or cover artist provides are not in line with what you see here, maybe that's somebody that you should pass up. You should never assume that cover artist can do the job, even if they've done different book covers and niches that look different. Each niche kind of takes a different skill set, right? So if you are doing something like this, you would probably look more towards a graphic designer, somebody that could do flat graphic art with good text, good color combinations, and really has an extreme eye for design. So let's look at the other side of the spectrum and let's look at science fiction romance. And these covers have a very illustrative quality to them. So here we see that we have kind of this devil-looking creature with some horns. If we go down, we definitely see that a lot of these are science fiction and fantasy related. So here I kind of expanded some of these. So we have kind of this devil looking creature with some horns. Here we have a couple of warriors, some tribal elements. They're glowing. We have a dragon in the background. For this one, we have a very fantasy-like character and a heavily Photoshop background with some fire here as well, and very nice text effects. And then here we have this couple, and you see this dragon here. The scales and the wings and the horns were put in. So these covers right here require a whole different set than the ones that we previously saw in business. So just like an athlete, not athletes are built the same. So if you take a defensive lineman, he is strong and he's probably built like an anchor, but he probably wouldn't do too good at a long distance race, right? So you have to match the skills of that cover artist to the actual niche that you're publishing in. So lastly, let's look at book formatting. This one could go either or. I did a lot of my formatting for a couple of years myself. I used Microsoft Word, then I started using different software, and then eventually I just pretty much handed this off as my business grew, as my backlist and the number of publishing titles grew each month. Then I just handed that off completely, and I focused more on the marketing side of things. So that's it, folks. Appreciate your time, and hopefully that gave you some insight on what it takes to make $10,000 a month of passive income with your Kindle Direct Publishing business. Before you leave, I do have a small going away present. I created a Kindle Direct Publishing guide that will definitely help you. You can go ahead and download it in the link down below. And thanks for watching, and I will catch you next time.